All right, Rob, let's get into it. The big game this weekend, a lot of NFL action, obviously, every weekend. But the big game is the Kansas City Chiefs and the Dallas Cowboys. And Amari Cooper is out. Is it COVID, Rob G? He's on the COVID list, yeah. So he looks like he's going to miss the game. But Amari Cooper's a very good receiver, so I don't want to minimize his talent.
But let me minimize him. That's what you're going to do. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying. I
don't want to minimize him, right? But let me tell you, it ain't going to matter.
Michael Gallup's back. They got CeeDee Lamb, who might be their best receiver anyway. Like, they'll be all right. All right? It's not like they only have one top receiver. So I think they're going to be fine. It hurts some, but it's not going to be an excuse should they lose. We talked about it, Rob. Tampa Bay's been without Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown. Everybody's got some injuries, COVID, whatever. As long as it's not like an Aaron Rodgers or Kyler Murray, you know. So anyway, that won't be an excuse. But I'm going to say this, Rob. You would typically think that the Chiefs, being, the success they've had over the last 3 years, last year obviously getting to the Super Bowl, losing, winning the Super Bowl the year before, going to the AFC Championship game the year before that, and Dallas struggling mightily for the last quarter century. You would think that this, would be a prove-it game for Dallas, right? I mean, they're the new kids on the block, so to speak. I know they got veterans, Zeke, Dak, and all that, but they haven't done anything. Let's just keep it real. But I feel the opposite way, Rob. I feel like this year, this is a prove-it game for Kansas City. Like, I think they've got more to prove. I think a win by them would say more about them than a win by Dallas would say about it. Now, if Dallas wins, they're going to get more love than they've already been getting. But my point is this, Rob. I think we know what Dallas is. Dallas is beating good teams. Minnesota's a good team, even though their record doesn't look like it. New England obviously has proven to be a good team. They beaten them. They beaten the Chargers. They're legit. They're legit NFC contenders. The Chiefs, I still think they're elite, but I got to be honest. The reason I feel like they're elite is because of what they've done the past 3 years, not what they've done this year. And the reason I feel like they have a shot in the AFC is because, again, their 3-year stretch before this season and the fact that there's no world beater in the AFC. Like, you look at most power rankings, it's mostly NFC teams at the top. The AFC, the best team playing right now is Tennessee, and they don't have their best player. So I think, Rob, Kansas City, yeah, they looked good last week against Las Vegas. But let's keep it real. Vegas is reeling. They lost to the Giants the week before. Henry Ruggs was not only a big loss for them on the field, they're one of their top receivers, but also, Rob, he killed a person with a DWI and is probably going to spend the next decade plus in prison. Yeah. That locker room is probably an emotional wreck after that.
And the kid, he's only 22. He's a kid.
Right.
And his
life is gone.
Imagine being a professional,
promising.
Making it your dream to the NFL, and in the blink of an eye, Chris, it's all over. And the Raiders are done with you, and, like you're in all kinds of legal problems, and your family and friends and all the people who have seen you to this point. And, yes, you're right. Teammates, you see somebody's life change in a blink of an eye. Man. It is a lot to overcome.
It's more than just a typical injury. So, so those are reasons, Rob. I think they proved a little something last week. It was good to see. But that doesn't mean they're back yet. Yeah, Sunday would mean, okay, they're back.
They have not fared well against good teams at home. Lost to Baltimore. Well, but I'm just saying at home, though. This is my home games. Lost to Baltimore, lost to the Chargers, lost to Buffalo, and they beat Green Bay 13-7 without Aaron Rodgers. I look at those games, and if they beat Dallas at home, I think then you could say, all right, looks like they righted the ship. They got the win against, it wasn't a great win, but they beat the Giants to get to 4-4. They beat Green Bay to go to 5-4. They blow out Vegas, and now they get a really good team, and they're at home and they win. If they give up 38 points and lose 38-15 or 17 or whatever score, then you got to look and go, okay, the defense ain't fixed, right? You start to look at that. If Patrick Mahomes goes
right
back
now
to,
like the defense is fixed.
Right. If Patrick goes back to the turnovers, right? It's been a couple games now. He hasn't had any. If he throws 2 picks, you got to go, okay, now what's happened here? What's going on? So I think for Kansas City, it's more so. Not that Dallas doesn't want to win or they wouldn't want to, punch their ticket even more. But in the division that they're in, they're going to win the division. It's a piece of cake. So that's already an advantage where the Chiefs aren't sure they're going to win the division, right? They like for sure. Whereas, the Cowboys will because there's nobody really else in the way. So, this is a bigger game for Kansas City. And Dallas, there's nothing Dallas can really prove, Chris, until they get to the postseason. They haven't been to an NFC Championship game in 25 years. That's what it's about. Forget they haven't even gotten there, let alone a Super Bowl. I mean, it's been a quarter century. And they have to prove it in the postseason for people to buy into the Cowboys. People talk about the Cowboys all the time. I remember, was it 2 years ago when ESPN predicted them to go to the Super Bowl? Like, people have been saying this for years, Chris. Like, for years.
Right.
And they haven't sniffed it.
But I'll be honest, right? Like, number one, even though I think Kansas City has more to gain and more to prove in this game, I do think Dallas will benefit if they win too. And I don't mean just by their record improving, but I do think, like, if they win this game, it's a statement for them too. I just think it's a bigger statement for Kansas City. Like, if they win this game, you're really going to start to hear people talk about Dallas maybe being the best team in the league.
Yeah, but they might, depending on how Kansas City plays, they might say they are not fixed. Okay, Dallas did what like a lot of good teams have come in there and beat them. I'm not trying to say that they don't get anything from it, Chris, but it just depends on how they win the game and how Kansas City plays, how much you'll validate it. Does that make sense?
I mean, but if Kansas City doesn't play well, I think Dallas will get a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, but it'll be another example of Kansas City maybe not really being there and winning games against teams that were either emotionally spent, missing players, or just not that good. Because that's what the last 3 wins have been. Giants, they won 2017. Packers 13-7 without Aaron Rodgers, and then they beat up on the Raiders. So it's a big win.
Would you write off? I'm guessing you wouldn't this soon, but maybe. Would you write off the Chiefs if they get beaten handily?
No, can't write them off, but I don't think you can make them the favorites of anything. I think you can't take a look and factor in the last 2 years or the last 3 years. You got to look at them for this year. If say they finish 8-8 or 9-8 or something, that would be a far cry from where they were and how how dominant they were. Right. This is a different Kansas City Chiefs team than we saw the previous 3 years.
Right. But if they win big, I think people will view them again as the favorites in the AFC. If they win big, not just if they win. If they win, they get a benefit and people will say, okay, they're back again. But they'll still be kind of in that pack. But if and I'm talking about perception, because the bottom line, Rob, is we got so much time left that, it's open. It's both conferences.
Ain't nothing going to be decided this week.
Exactly.
Period. For anybody. I don't care. I don't care. No one's going to be crowned this weekend. But I get what you're saying. If they could win, or if they win in a blowout, if they get blowed out, Chris, what would you think? If they got blowed out at home, and they lose 42-7, I'm just throwing a score out.
Like you say, I mean, if they lose 42-7, to me the worst thing that could happen, like realistically, is something like 34-14.
Okay.
Now, obviously, that's not good either. But I cannot see something like 42-7. But
no, that would be an ultimate butt.
Yeah, that would be like, oh my gosh. But to answer your question, if they lose big, like you said, you can't write them off. They do still have the talent, but all of that goodwill and all of that confidence they reinstilled in people that, are their fans from last week will be gone. And I think here's the question, Rob. You saw last week after their win over the Raiders, Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, and others talked about having their swagger back, right? They talked about watching this video of this high school kid from years ago who's, I got my swagger back. And Kelce even did it. The exact move the kid did. If number one, Rob, that tells you their confidence was shaken, right?
There's no doubt.
That tells you that.
There's no way that they had gone through, Chris, what they had been through this year, and they could sit there and act like, well, the last 3 years. No, they have been beat up, and things had happened to them that they hadn't experienced.
Right.
Like, period.
And they admitted it by saying, we got our swagger back. Okay, so you lost your swagger.
Right. Where was it?
Over the past month. Right.
Right.
So if they lose this game, especially if they get blasted, I don't think a close loss will rock them. I mean, obviously they'll be disappointed. They'll got to go back to the drawing board. It won't rock them. If they get destroyed, that confidence, Rob, I think is going to go again. It's going to go again. And they're going to have to try to find they almost have to run the table at that point to really get it back to where it was. So big game for Kansas City, big game for Dallas, but bigger for the Chiefs, in our opinion.